exorcism to command demons to do other things that they are interested in. You know, a demon could make me rich. A demon could find some hidden treasure for me.
Fear that necromancers and witches are all around, conjuring up demons and making pacts with the devil, sweeps across Europe. One of the first cases investigated by the Inquisition is in the Irish city of Kilkenny. In 1324, in a dispute over inheritance, one of the richest women in the town, Dame Alice Catala, is accused of witchcraft, heresy, and of having a demon lover called Robin.
Alice Catala, a landowner in Kilkenny who had several husbands, so her stepchildren brought a charge against her that she'd poisoned her previous husbands in order to obtain the land, and she poisoned or killed them otherwise through witchcraft.
Alice manages to escape to England. Her unfortunate servant, Petronella, is tortured and burned at the stake. The campaign against necromancers, sorcerers, and witches lasts 300 years and kills between 60,000 and 300,000 people. The vast majority of the victims are women.
Women were thought of as being more prone to the devil, more likely to sin, more likely to be led astray. They were also thought to be less intellectual than men.
Women were seen as closer to animals. And part of this was that they were more susceptible to temptation, that they were more easily seduced by material gratification.
As the Inquisition goes about its grisly business, rounding up suspects and interrogating them, many clerics and lay people worry that it's all guesswork. Perhaps they're missing even more witches than they're finding. But how can you tell who is one of Satan's helpers? What you need is a standard test. In 1486, two German Dominican monks publish a textbook for inquisitors called Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches. The book contains a clever catch-22. Not only is witchcraft heresy, not believing in witches is heresy as well.
The Malleus Maleficarum was the manual, the how to get rid of all these demonic fleas that had infested a human being.
It was a book of what witches were, what witches did.
Malleus Maleficarum tells the Inquisitor everything he needs to know. Witches have the mark of Satan on their bodies, a birthmark or a wart. They can fly by rubbing magical herbs on their skin, and they gather at Satan-worshipping ceremonies called Sabbaths. At these, they celebrate a twisted version of the Christian Mass, kissing the devil's rear end in a blasphemous act of homage.
Certainly there was a fear at that time, which was why Malleus Maleficarum sold so many copies and ran through so many editions, and is still in print.
30 years after Malleus Maleficarum was written, Martin Luther leads the Protestant Reformation, splitting the Christian Church in two. Each faction, Protestant and Catholic, claims the other is in league with the evil one. Both sides use Malleus Maleficarum to find Satanists, and not just in order to destroy them. Witch hunting is a kind of scientific quest. The idea is, if you can understand witches and the devil, you can fight them.
The whole business of witch hunting is almost a sort of intellectual research project. I need to gather a bit more data about, what demons do. So I'm going to interrogate a few more witches to get a bit more data, and then I'm going to write it up in my book. The cutting edge of scientific inquiry.
Right across Europe, hysteria about Satan sweeps Protestant and Catholic countries alike. In Scotland, James VI, one of the best educated kings in Europe, is so caught up in the craze, he writes a book about the devil and witchcraft. Called Demonology, James' book sets out to prove that Satan-worshipping witches are everywhere, and that they are the gravest threat to the security of the state.
He surrounded himself with advisors, and mainly religious advisors, who would protect him from the demons that he feared so much. He saw it everywhere.
Well, James was certainly quite militant about this. He thought he was fighting a war.
Even as James leads the fight against the devil and the forces of evil, the devil is helping James to keep his crown. James can always point to the figure of Satan and say, if it weren't for me, look who would be ruling in my place.
Although this is quite frightening, it's also in a way quite gratifying for James. One of the witches who was interrogated was asked, why is the devil attacking our king? And the witch who was confessing allegedly answered, this is what was recorded anyway in her confession, the devil is doing this because King James is the greatest enemy that the devil has in the world.
When the New World of the Americas is colonized by Europeans, the devil travels with them. The Puritan colonists who arrived from England in the late 1600s are strong believers in the power of Satan. They're convinced that everyone who isn't a Puritan is controlled by the devil, and that women are especially susceptible to Satan's powers.
They had established what might be called Puritan communities, and were looking to build a great example for the rest of Christendom.
If you were enjoying yourself, or if a group of you were singing or dancing or having a drink, then those who were opposed to that kind of fun were quite certain that Satan was filling the glasses for you.
In 1688 in Boston, an Irish laundrywoman called Mary Glover is accused of bewitching the children of one of her customers. Proof of her pact with the devil includes several rag dolls found in her house.
Mary Glover was Irish and a servant. Her first language was Gaelic, and one of the tests to prove that you weren't a witch was to speak the Lord's Prayer. The linguistic difficulties meant that she couldn't speak the Lord's Prayer without, as they saw it, blaspheming. She was hanged as a witch in 1688.
Three years after Mary Glover is hanged, less than 20 miles away at Salem, Massachusetts, the testimony of 3 young girls leads to a mass execution.
Some of the children were said to be possessed by spirits sent from the witches. And so when they were standing witness, they were performing being possessed.
In the Salem witch hunt, 150 people are arrested. 19 men and women are hung or crushed to death. 17 others die in prison. In an ironic twist to the story, the Salem jury later apologized, blaming the devil for their mistake. By the 1700s, the witch craze in America and Europe is almost over. A new, more scientific view of the world is gaining ground.
Modernism, as the project that we get from the 18th century Enlightenment, actually banished religion, superstition, and all of that, and just said that belongs to the Dark Ages. We're now in the modern world. We believe in facts. We believe in science. And if you want to be religious, that's a private option which you can go and practice somewhere else.
Although the witch hunts have ended, and the educated classes of Europe and America even start to question whether the devil exists, in the folk tales of ordinary people, Satan lives on. But he's very different from the formidable and terrifying devil of the witch-finders.
One of my own favourites is that of Dunstan, who was a very powerful blacksmith. The devil arrives and asks to have his shoes replaced.
And he simply gets hold of his nose with 2 red-hot tongs and throws him out. And that is a very, very different devil. That's a devil that you can put in his place.
By now, the devil has shed some of his ugliness and crude habits. In fact, he's often a member of the decadent aristocracy. He's a handsome gentleman dressed in fine clothes and mixing in fashionable company. Like Hades, the Greek god of the underworld, and the Satan of the ancient Gnostic heresies, this Satan controls the material world of wealth, power, and sex. He can give all these things to you if you promise him your soul. The most famous of all devil folktales is the story of Faust. The devil, in the form of the clever and devious Mephistopheles, offers to grant Faust all his wishes. But there's a price.
One of the things that many necromancers or people using necromantic spells are interested in is how to get women into bed. Faust is very interested in that, and he gets all kinds of women, including Helen of Troy.
Faust's bargain with the devil ends in disaster for Faust. Mephistopheles calls in his debt, and Faust dies horribly. The devil takes him away to spend eternity in hell. As the power of religion fades, and the age of popes and kings gives way to the age of revolution and democracy, a new devil arrives on the scene. This devil is utterly different from the treacherous fiend of Christian tradition. He is a tragic and lonely figure, a hero battling against tyrannical authority in the shape of a cruel and overbearing god. Satan is now a brave and handsome rebel.
And so you get the kind of romantic view of Satan as not really a villain or an evil person at all, but the opposite of that. Satan is a good guy who's challenging the boss.
In the age of Romanticism, we find the poets, particularly like Byron, creating a Byronic hero who is somehow dark and sinister and has a past. And so, far from being something to shun and something to fear, the devil is admired.
With the 20th century, the devil's fortunes take a turn for the worse. No longer feared or admired, he becomes a figure of fun. He even joins the world of commerce, helping to sell products from wine to chocolates and beer. In the age of marketing and the consumer society, Satan can bring the lure of the forbidden to a tired brand. It's a long way from an apocalyptic war between good and evil.
It has been a hallmark of the 20th century for the devil to be treated as a figure of fun. We find the devil is neither better nor worse than the people he's dealing with, and he's just a man among men.
Satan seems to have been cut down to size. The Prince of Darkness has become a mischievous imp. But in a surprising twist, a different Satan, the glamorous rebel so admired by the revolutionaries of the 19th century, makes a startling comeback in the 1960s.
There was a strong sense of rebellion against everything that anointed the Western political power structure. And it was Christian, it was capitalist, it was warmongering. And so the counterculture started exploring anything that was counter to that.
In 1966, occult showman Anton LaVey founds the Church of Satan in San Francisco. Part religion, part money-making racket, the Church of Satan attracts lurid headlines, mostly encouraged by the publicity-seeking LaVey himself.
We believe in greed, we believe in selfishness, we believe in all of the lustful thoughts that motivate man, because this is man's natural feeling.
He called himself Anton Sander LaVey of Romanian descent, but the truth of the matter is he was Howard Stanton Levy, who was born in Cook County, Illinois in 1930. He held these weekend lectures and witch circles in his house, and people would come in and pay their $2 a head. Well, finally, he had this friend, it was a publicist, who said, you know, I have an idea. Why don't you turn this thing into a church? You could make a bundle of money. And, of course, that's what he did.
He has been called everything from a carny to a manipulator to a brilliant philosopher. The truth lies somewhere in the middle.
There were doctors, lawyers, college students, factory workers, farmers, you name it. They came from all levels of society.
In spite of the invented rituals, mostly staged for the cameras, neither LaVey nor his followers believe in a real devil. What LaVey admires is Satan the rebel, the nonconformist, provoking the establishment. Predictably, America is fascinated and outraged. In 1967, the 60s fascination with the occult, spearheaded by LaVey's Church of Satan, gets a powerful boost from Hollywood. The film Rosemary's Baby, a dark tale of devil worshippers in Manhattan, is a massive and unexpected hit. In Roman Polanski's masterpiece, the heroine's innocuous neighbors are part of a satanic conspiracy to help the Prince of Darkness father a child who will rule the world. In Rosemary's Baby, Satan triumphs in the end. But the Christian backlash to the story comes in the 1973 blockbuster The Exorcist. This time, the devil, who has possessed a young girl, is defeated by the forces of good in the shape of two priests. The old belief that women are especially susceptible to satanic influence is revived 2 centuries after the Salem witch trials.
We would be seriously in error if we were to underestimate the power of Hollywood. I think the biggest impact was probably around the time of The Exorcist.
I know many people I've talked to about the movie, especially those raised in a Christian household, who are very frightened by it, very upset. It's the war between good and evil, but evil is in a whole new dimension, and it's very personal.
It made being possessed almost fashionable. It's the numbers of people who were seen to be possessed just took off.
I've been invited to exorcise people who were convinced they had a demon, and you will get people who put them through it, and it can be very violent and very dramatic and very expressive, but it can really flip someone into serious ill health.
Hollywood's discovery that fortunes can be made with stories of possession and devil worship stokes the fires of a paranoia that has lain dormant since the days of the witch trials. In the 1980s, stories about a vast conspiracy of organized Satanists sweep the media. Known as the Satanic Panic, Christian groups allege mass satanic abuse of children and tens of thousands of kidnappings.
Part of the Satanic Panic started with accusations of satanic ritual abuse. Groups of people who declared themselves as Satanists were believed to be taking people and children and damaging them.
There were all kinds of dark suggestions about children disappearing and about child sacrifice and ritual murder.
Although hundreds of people are arrested and imprisoned, when the FBI finally launches a full-scale investigation in the United States, it concludes that the satanic abuse allegations are all groundless.
One of the horrifying things about human nature is that it lends itself to hysteria. You get it in all periods of history. I think you get it much more virulently nowadays because one of the most potent instruments for spreading hysteria is the modern telecommunications industry.
If members of satanic religions mostly don't believe in a supernatural devil and don't pray to Satan, what does the devil represent? Some Satanists claim the devil stands for a spirit of change.
A lot of people are frightened by the term Satanism. A lot of people automatically think that Satanists are bad people. They should be no more scared of a Satanist than they should be scared of anyone else they meet.
You know, what Satanism means to me is opposition and balance. Alternative thought, playing the devil's advocate. There is no good and evil. I mean, to a mouse, a cat is a horrible, evil thing with fangs. But to the pet owner, the cat is heavenly. We create our own reality. That's the whole idea behind Satanism.
In the United States, surveys show that almost half of Americans believe the devil is real. Even non-religious people instinctively divide the world into good and evil, the opposing principles taught by Zoroaster to the ancient Persians. If anything, recent events have made that belief even stronger. In September 2001, the massive terrorist attacks on the United States, which destroyed the World Trade Center, shocked America to its core. To many, it seemed as if sinister forces had gone on the offensive. It was easy to believe that this was a showdown between the forces of good and evil. to the US government and a large section of American opinion, the attacks were about much more than politics.
We've come to know truths that we will never question. Evil is real, and it must be opposed.
You're either with us or you're against us. And if you're against us, by and large, you're going to be working hand in hand with Satan.
It was Reagan that talked about the evil empire. Bush talks about the axis of evil. It's classic, ancient, dualistic thinking.
In the wake of the 9/11 attacks, President Bush gave the job of catching Osama bin Laden, the man responsible for the atrocity, to Lieutenant General William G. Boykin. But according to Boykin, America's real foe isn't bin Laden. In the general's words, the enemy of the US is a guy called Satan. Since 2001, the draconian measures taken by the US and other governments in the war on terror are uncannily like those of the war on Satan of 400 years ago. Imprisonment without trial, secret hearings, anonymous tip-offs, and torture.
We are seeing a similar willingness to justify mistreatment, to justify the removal of rights, the justifiable use of torture against the perceived enemy in the war against terrorism.
If you're fighting a war against evil, what begins to happen, I think, is that you end up by turning into the evil that you're fighting.
Controversially, President Bush called the invasion of Iraq a crusade. The similarities with the historic crusades against heretics are striking. They include a belief on the battlefield that the enemy are not just military opponents, but agents of pure evil. In November 2004, as US forces launch a massive attack on the Iraqi city of Fallujah, a senior Marine officer, Lieutenant Colonel Gareth Brandle, makes clear who he thinks the enemy is.
The enemy he's got to face is called Satan. He's in Fallujah. We're going to destroy him.
It's embroidery, it's myth-making, it's poetry. It can be good fun, except that it has produced great evils. A human invention, but one that's rebounded on us because it's given us permission to do terrible things to each other, which is why I think that we should close hell down and finally banish the devil and get rid of him.